Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kristina Lynn Show. The talk show with heart, where Kristina brings you up close and personal with the most fascinating guests from all walks of life.
Last week, Brandon met a girl on a dating app. One day after work, he finally found the courage to ask her out. No answer. He started to panic. Was he being too pushy? Maybe it was too...
Hey, sorry I didn't respond. I was driving. I would love to go on a date. How does tonight sound?
Brandon tried to play it cool, but inside he knew. A girl so smart, so responsible. She must be a keeper.
And now your host, Kristina Lynn.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Kristina Lynn Show. We are the talk show with heart, and we take you right to the heart of the matter. That's right. We're going to take you to some of the most fascinating people on this planet Earth. And I have two of them with me today. There's no doubt. Two of my favorites, as a matter of fact. It is the very well-known Siegel Brothers, and that's Dr. Ricky Siegel and Professor Larry Siegel. So welcome to the show today, gentlemen. And it's just such a real honor. We have worked together over the years, and I have come to really have such great respect for the work that you all are doing. And of course, in this day and age, it's now more important than ever. So welcome to the show, and I'm going to get great to have you. Now, I'm going to jump right in because we've got a lot to cover. And I particularly want to cover some special things right now in this first show with Ricky, because as busy as you are, we're just so lucky to have you. And then we're going to have a part two after that with some other subjects that we'll look at with Professor Larry. So starting out with you now, Ricky. Ricky Siegel is the director of the Modern Sex Therapy Institutes, which I am very excited to hear about that. Congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
Great. And if you will do me a favor, let's tell the audience exactly what are the Modern Sex Therapy Institutes.
Happy to, indeed, and very proud to share that we were voted by an independent research firm to be the best overall sex therapy training program in the country. So we're very proud, very excited. We're a wonderful business partner in Dr. Rachel Needle. And we train therapists and mental health and medical professionals in sex therapy, sexuality counseling, sexuality education, all of the things that are missing for the most part in mental health and medicine these days.
Well, that is so important. And what a fantastic opportunity for so many people to learn from you all. Now, does this really... is it set up to where it is going to be really helping our doctors and our nurses, all of our health practitioners? Because from what I've heard, and if you could elaborate a little more on this too, Ricky, a lot of them don't get training in the sex field.
Absolutely.
Is that true?
It is true. And I know you've discussed this in the past with Larry. Unfortunately, at best, most medical schools might offer a weekend out of their 4 years of training to discuss sexuality issues, if that. Most psychologists and psychotherapists, even including marriage and family therapists, which we really can't help but pounce on because it's in their name. Sexuality is in their name, like marriage and family. Why do people get married and how do they have families? And yet that doesn't get discussed by the vast majority of marriage and family therapists, even couples counselors. You know, it's just it's a glaring missing piece from the training of our professionals. Most people would think they can bring sexual questions to their gynecologist or urologist. And as Larry brilliantly points out, they're more mechanics, right? And really work on the parts rather than what people do with them. And they really have very little training about the brain and its role in sexuality and people's, living experience and relationships and intimacy. All of that is not really academic.
Oh, now that's really shocking. Now, what are you doing, Ricky, to help to change that and to really make a big difference so that this can change?
Well, it really is in training the therapists. They are the ones that often need as much work as the patients they're working with. There's a tendency to feel like if they don't have that specific training, they need to kind of back out and defer. This is a reality Larry and I have noticed over decades, that the vast majority of therapists are far more comfortable talking with patients about their worst, most horrendous kinds of sexual abuse and assault than they are talking about their most ecstatic experiences, their positive sexual experience. I'm not a sex expert. I'm not comfortable there. But they're comfortable talking about such horrendous kinds of abuse histories. It just doesn't make sense.
And, and if I can just throw in, because I think that's such an important point, that, the only time we do see even people feeling like they have permission to talk about sex and sexuality is if it's horrible, negative, and painful. We don't seem to be able to talk about even casually anything that's based on, like Ricky said, the ecstatic, pleasurable aspect of all of that. And it's, it's really mind-boggling when you think of it is probably the number one binding, most common aspect of human experience.
Right.
We avoid it more than anything else.
Now, as an educator, Larry, let's look at that further. What are you all doing? And I know you have been really trying to make strides in the educational field and working with nurses and with doctors. What have you been able to help also to implicate or, to move forward in this field?
Well, I think I have been a little bit fortunate in that I sort of have the opportunity to kind of circumvent a lot of the objections, especially in my my nursing schools that I'm involved with. When I teach human growth and development, again, my that's a perfect opportunity. You can't talk about growth and development without talking about sexual development. So I'm lucky that I'm able to kind of create that thread and weave that in to all of my teaching for medical professionals, nursing professionals, when it comes to looking at how we become who we are. In areas of teaching in psychology, again, we have to talk about aspects of the self, the way people identify their psychological and emotional sort of being that people really are. We can't avoid talking about sexuality.
I have to say, we can't. Unfortunately, most professionals do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
it's impossible
exactly.
for us to separate sexuality from growth and development. But most people who teach these things, the proverbial 10-foot pole, they don't go.
Right. And we have to be good at finding those opportunities because they're really good at avoiding it.
Wow. Now, what can we do? And what would you all be recommending? Let's start with you, Ricky, about making a big change in the medical schools and even in school before that. Let's look at, high school and junior high, and what could be done to change the climate that leads up to this, because it does sound like it's such a big problem and it really needs to be changed.
It does. And unfortunately, a lot of the controversy these days around sexuality education want to focus on controversial subjects and things that, naturally trigger people, especially parents. And so there's all like our new law in Florida that's known as the Don't Say Gay bill, right? They're just anti-sex ed folks are just filling people's heads with crazy notions that teachers are encouraging kids to throw the rules out and pick whatever they want and be whatever gender they want and change next week. And it's really quite silly, and it detracts from what young people, adults, parents really need to understand, that sexuality education, sexual health begins with attitudes.
Yeah.
and our comfort in feeling with the fact that human beings are sexual beings. Conservative people have sex just like liberal people do. Religious people have sex, right? This is really not, there isn't an exemption for who should be and who shouldn't be talking about. This should be universal.
Right.
And the attitudes really come first.
Right. And again, if I can just add to that too, it's such another example of how this is part of living in upside down world, because all of these people that are having sex, it seems people, with all the problems and issues that they do have, they don't really overall have a problem having sex. It's talking about it that's a problem.
Right, communicating.
And again, that's upside down world stuff.
Okay, so Larry, we'll start with you on this one. How can we change that stigma? What can be done to really change that stigma? What would you say?
Ricky sort of nailed it, no pun intended, that this really is about attitudes. And it is that fundamental negative, I would even say incorrect attitude that so many people have about sex, that number one, it's not, people don't look at it as what we are, which is what our sexuality is. They just look at it as what people do. And they're identifying this, the behavior through this lens of some kind of arbitrary connecting to the old puritanical values. People are trying to define sex to the way people thought about it in the 1500s, and not even the way people thought about it in the 1500s, but only the most uptight people in the 1500s.
Well, listen, on that note, we're going to talk a lot more about this, but I am going to have to break for a word from our sponsors. So stay tuned, and we will be right back to lots more of the Kristina Lynn Show.
Serving part-time in the Army National Guard has led to a lot of firsts for me. It paid for me to be the first person in my family to go to school and graduate debt-free. That education helped me get to the first day at my career, a job that I can still hold while I serve part-time. That job and the home loan benefits I got from my service helped me buy my first home. And I take pride knowing I will be the first to respond if my community ever needs me. To learn more, visit nationalguard.com.
Hello, this is Kristina Lynn from the Kristina Lynn Show, and I have a big announcement today that I am so excited about. We have a wonderful new sponsor that it is my honor to announce is the great organization Ameliorate. Ameliorate is something that has just changed my life in so many great ways, and I'm so happy to not just give a commercial here, but to give an endorsement. But right now, Stacy, we want to tell the audience about Ameliorate. You have offered a special offer. If any of you, when you go on to Ameliorate, you will have a place you can click when you say, I was referred by the Kristina Lynn Show.
When they get in touch with me through the website, when people get in touch with me and they mention the Kristina Lynn Show, we'll get 5% off. Ameliorate Your Life is a at-home wellness program, and it's as easy as a click of a button on your laptop or your mobile device. And at Ameliorate, we have tons of classes about breathing classes, yoga classes, nutrition classes, anything to ameliorate your life. We ameliorate your life through products, classes, the incredible healers that are on the website.
Everything is top-notch, 5-star, and it's all set up to make you feel better, to give us our best life, and to keep you nice and healthy. Would you please give us again the Ameliorate wonderful website where everyone can go and get their 5% off by mentioning the Kristina Lynn Show?
So it's www.aylnow.com.
So again, I'm Kristina Lynn right here on the Kristina Lynn Show. Make sure that you go to the Ameliorate website, click on there, get your discount, and you will be thanking us soon. That's Ameliorate.
Take a step toward bringing our country and community together. Start a meaningful conversation at lovehasnolabels.com/one small step. A message from StoryCorps, Love Has No Labels, and the Ad Council.
Hello and welcome back. I'm your host, Kristina Lynn, and I'm speaking to two amazing guests today. As you know, we always find them and seek out the most fascinating, interesting, and well-educated experts on our show. And we have two of them here today, and that is for sure. So we've got Dr. Ricky Siegel, and they are brothers. People are asking me, I got an email in that said, are they brothers? Yes, they are. And his wonderful brother, who is Professor Larry Siegel. So Ricky, I'm going to start with you on this next question. And that is, we had spoken about the stigma that's going on now with doctors and how some of them are just not stepping forward to really learn enough about how to communicate on all areas of sex with their clients and their patients. So particularly, let's look at the gynecological aspect of this. The gynecologist, I just can't imagine that they are particular specialists in a field where they wouldn't they know better and want to reach out to your institute and to you?
You would think so. But again, to another quote of my brilliant brother, who's often said that one can be a brilliant mechanic and still not be a good driver. Right?
Okay.
And I think this fits very well, especially with medical providers, where, again, they know the parts, they know disease and function and what's supposed to work and how it's supposed to work. They don't really know much about what goes on between the ears rather than between the legs. And they certainly don't get any background in the relational context that sex almost always occurs in.
That's right. And sometimes I know they'll ask the question, are you being sexually active? What's going on with you? Those kinds of questions. And Larry, let's move over to you on that. How can they disconnect that and make it so mechanical? Because it is so emotional and it's holistic, mind, body, and spirit. Right?
Again, one would think. But I think the focus, remember, for most medical professionals, at least, in the United States, but in general, most medical professionals are really only looking at what is it that you're complaining about? What is the problem? What is the symptom? And let's try to fix that. So with most doctors, if they think about sex and sexuality, what they think of are things like unintended pregnancy or pregnancy complications and sexually transmitted infections. They don't get into the qualitative aspect of relationships or even just people.
Right. I know I've had even some friends of mine. One who was postmenopausal, and she was having discomfort, with certain sexual acts. And she was shocked to see that her gynecologist was uncomfortable to offer her solutions of how she could overcome that so that she could have a successful, pleasurable sex life, with her partner.
Right. You know what the classic suggestion was for throughout history for gynecologists? Would tell women to have a glass of wine.
Right.
You need to relax. Right. That thinking was, if a woman was experiencing sexual pain, she was too uptight.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Instead of learning how to evaluate that sex is not supposed to hurt. And if it does, we need to find out why.
Yeah. If it's painful, it's causing pain. What's going on? And how can you alleviate that so that you can enjoy the pleasure and be able to have a very successful, happy sex life? I mean, sex is so important in any relationship.
Absolutely. And let me throw something, because I don't want it to appear that we only have this negative view of doctors and health professionals when it comes to sex and sexuality. There's also a kind of practical aspect of it, that they, in the course of a doctor examining a patient and working with them, they don't have the time to talk about this stuff.
They're rushing through
3 minutes on average with a patient. The sexuality stuff, they're trying to get out of the room before you even have a chance to bring it up. It's what we call that doorknob confession, that it usually is, that the doctor's trying to get out there, and they don't want to hear that, oh, by the way.
Yeah, there's this thing, and really it's so embarrassing. I didn't tell anybody about it before, and you could see their eyes rolling from the back of their head.
Right. So it really is a combination of they really don't have the preparation or the knowledge, and they don't really have the time and opportunity to have those kinds of conversations. Now, good ones will invite people to talk about that. They'll make the time. They'll maybe have special time that they set aside that they can just focus on those kinds of issues with people.
Yeah, one of the drums that Larry and I like to bang is that we still, there was kind of a resurgence. It didn't start then, but there was a resurgence in the field of sexual medicine in 1998 when Viagra came along. Again, another drug discovered an accidental side effect. And so we have this fantasy, at least one that we talk about in public, that someday there'll be a sex therapist, endocrinologist, while we're at it, cardiologist, pick your medical specialty, and there's a need for someone to be working with those folks to bridge this gap.
So stay tuned. We've got lots more with the Siegel Brothers. Don't go away.
So, what is love? Love is being independent. Love is dancing. At Shriners Hospital for Children, love is a new smile.
At Shriners Hospitals for Children, love is caring for a child regardless of the family's ability to pay. Learn how you can send your love to the rescue at lovetotherescue.org.
We're back with lots more of the Kristina Lynn Show, and I'm speaking to two of my favorite guests, the Siegel Brothers, Dr. Ricky Siegel and Professor Larry Siegel. How are you going to market this, Ricky, to really help these physicians? Because some of them probably don't even think they need it. Obviously, they don't think it's that important. How are you all marketing the institute, your institute, and really getting them in there? Do you have a plan? I'm just curious. And if so, is that working well? Are you finding that more and more physicians are coming back to you or coming?
That has been slower. Traditionally, sex therapy certification training attracts psychotherapists, psychologists, social workers, marriage and family therapists, counselors.
Right.
It's still relatively new for programs such as ours to attract physicians, nurse practitioners. Another, although it's been around for almost 30 years, it still seems new even within the field of physical therapy, specialty known as pelvic floor physical therapy. These are the types of medical professionals that really would do well to understand the larger sexuality context and work in collaboration with.
Yes. That's the key, collaboration. I was just thinking that I think one thing you all are going to be able to do, hopefully, with your institute is to bridge that gap and bring the sex therapists to work in tandem with these gynecologists that don't have time. They need to be able to have this as a resource and say, hey, here's a card or here's a contact for Dr. Siegel. You can reach out to him. I don't have time for this. And I'll be honest, I haven't really been trained, but he has. So that's what we need to really hope for, right? Sure. You agree with that, Larry?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, there's that attitudinal shift because unfortunately, a lot of medical and health professionals don't really understand the psychotherapy aspect of things. So, unfortunately, for a lot of medical professionals, you say, oh, yeah, he's a sex therapist. They're like, what's that?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And they may be more inclined for any type of what they can construe a mental health issue, refer to a psychiatrist. And they may not be very clear on that too, but they know that's an MD. So I'm an MD. So I'll go to another MD. That kind of, sort of connecting just based on what they're familiar with is also a part of the problem and why that attitude shift and the learning has to really start from the very beginning.
Right. And that's why I am so excited about you all being so much on television and radio. And now this always brings to me, Larry and I recently talked about this, Ricky, but I'd love to hear you speak about it too, to one of my favorites, Dr. Ruth Siegel. And she's a Siegel also.
That's right.
You all tell me the story. We have just a couple minutes and then we'll take a break. Oh, yeah. Ricky, what do you remember, you and Larry, about Dr. Siegel? Oh, my goodness. Look at that. Oh, my gosh. We've got a little. Oh, there is Dr.
That may be the only
Ruth Siegels.
That may be the only picture in the world with two Ruth Siegels in it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great because your mother's named Ruth, just like Dr. Ruth.
Right. May they both rest. May our mom rest in peace. Dr. Ruth is with us. She's getting quite
just resting.
age. And
God bless her.
A pioneer, for sure.
Yes, what a trailblazer, what a pioneer. And what was that like to meet her? That must have been amazing, with your mother, no less.
That's right. It was really wonderful. She was so warm, and for a diminutive, tiny little woman, she was a giant. And really, you felt it in her presence.
That's beautiful. And how about that with you, Larry? Did you feel that same thing too?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I always have to point out how tickled our mother was as well. And for all the other reasons that, everybody can imagine, one of the greatest things was Dr. Ruth made our mom, Ruth, feel very tall.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And I got to meet her myself in New York, and I felt tall. Yes. She's an amazing pioneer. And that's why I love having you all on the show, too, because we've got to get the word out. Doctors, wake up and realize that your patients need more. So let's move on now to another subject. We've talked about a lot of important things already, but I want us to look now at a problem that has really seemed to have gotten much stronger, unfortunately, much more prevalent, I should say, since COVID happened in 2020 and the lockdown, and that is domestic violence. We're hearing of much higher divorce rates and lots of problems with that area. So I'd like for you all to speak on that today, and also the fact that what you're doing, Ricky, with your institute, you're being the director of the Modern Sex Therapy Institutes, to really help educate doctors and health workers. And that's what you're doing too, Larry. We need to really make a difference, because doesn't that really tie in with promoting domestic violence?
Well, these attitudes that we've been talking about, this is certainly one of the consequences of poor sexual health that we can trace directly back to attitudes about sex and gender and marriage and what it means to be a wife. We have to remember, in this country, I used to love to make this point to my undergrads, that it was a full 60 years after the Emancipation Proclamation in 1865, when we decreed that slavery was abolished in the United States of America.
I can't even believe we're almost out of time for this show, but I would like to, first of all, Ricky, have you tell our audience exactly how they can reach you and find out more about your institute, or about coming to you themselves if they want a private session.
Well, sure. The easiest way to find me would be to just go to modernsextherapyinstitutes.com.
Okay, good. Modernsextherapyinstitutes.com.
Yes, that's a great place for therapists and medical providers to learn about options for their continuing education. And as you said, if anyone is looking to get a hold of me personally, that's the best way to do it.
They can contact you there. Okay, and Larry, how about you? How can you be contacted as well?
You can look me up at sageinstitute.org.
Okay, and that's your nonprofit, right?
It's my nonprofit. And, you can also, I'm also on faculty of Modern Institutes for Sex Therapy. So, it could be a one-stop shop.
Well, I want to thank you both so much for being here today. So I'm your host, Kristina Lynn, and be sure and join us next week for another edition of the Kristina Lynn Show. Until then, be kind to everyone, stay healthy, and stay happy, and we'll see you next time.
We'll be looking forward to seeing you again. And don't forget just how important you really are to us. We love and respect each and every one of you.
The IRS called and sent me an email requesting payment. Is this a scam?
Scammers often impersonate IRS employees by calling, emailing, or even texting you in attempts to steal your money or personal information. It is a scam. Do not respond. IRS scammers continue to be a serious threat to the public and have claimed victims in every state, and now have evolved to include pandemic-related scams. Scammers may be combative and threatening in order to bully you into sending them money immediately. The IRS always initiates communications by mail first and will never threaten to arrest or deport you or demand your personal information. The IRS does not request payment by phone, text, email, or gift cards. Protect yourself. just hang up or delete the message. If you suspect you've been contacted by a scammer, submit an incident report to the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration at tips.tigda.gov. You can also call their TIGDA hotline at 1-800-366-4484.